Hey, everyone jumping in. I see people starting to file in. Very good to see you. Let's see. I think we're going to have a poll in the first minute here while some people jump in. Yeah, it should be popping up on screen. So if you feel like it, go on and answer that poll. We'll have a look at that. These are actually going to be kind of like the four big areas that we look at today. We're going to talk about demographics and behavior, analytics and measurement, channels, tactics, and Martech AI and Martech, what's going on there. So, what kind of change you anticipate there, whether you view that change positively as an opportunity, negatively as a challenge, or a mixture of both, and it's a multi-select. So you can go on and let us know which of these areas you're expecting to see the most change this year. Yeah, we had about just over 300 registrants for this webinar. So first off, I just want to say a big thanks to everyone who is registered. And of course, all of you here joining us live right now. Really appreciate that. Means a lot to us that you share your time with us in this way. And I'll try to make the best use of that time I can. As I mentioned, we've got a poll on screen. If you want to have a look at that, let us know which of these areas have been you're expecting the most change in the year ahead, or maybe based on the past year where you've experienced the most change. These are the core thematic areas that we're going to talk about today. And we can look at those results. And by the way, there'll also be a Q&A at the end. So you can drop questions in the Q&A at any time, and I'll review those at the end. And don't be shy. I love the Q&A. I might not be able to answer your question. If I can't, I'll just tell you I can't, but I'll always do my best. Maybe throw a hot take or two out there. So without further ado, this giant picture of my face is bugging me. Unfortunately, there's another picture of my face on the next slide, I think. But this is what's in and what's out for 2024. This was a kind of a Gen Z phenomenon, these in and out lists that occurred at the end of 2023. And it inspired me to think, well, what are the things that are in and out for e-commerce? Someone has asked me if people can hear me. Just, drop me a note in the questions if you can't hear. But I think we did a sound check before. I think you should be able to hear me. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it more. So first, a quick word about myself. Then my face is off the screen, or at least off the slides for a while. But who am I? My name is Mike, and I'm an analyst. I'm a nerd. And so I think that behind every great CMO, every great marketing director, every great VP marketing, there is at least one great nerd. And, a lot of CMOs out there are nerds themselves. But the kind of concept of this is that we should go through some current themes pretty breezy. Sometimes I've got just like, sometimes there's data like a chart. Sometimes there's a meme or a tweet to just shed a little light on some changes that I'm observing. But my goal is basically to highlight to you what is happening and why it matters. And by the way, I also think it's these kind of prediction lists or trend lists that get published at the beginning of every year. They're sort of artificial because these things are always on a longer timeline. And it's not just like a flip switches at the end of the calendar year or something like that. So these are just things that are evolving, and we'll talk about those. Quick word about Smarter E-commerce, SMec, my employer, who we are before we get into the content. Yeah, basically we are a technology provider, and we also have some services layered on top of our technology here in lovely Austria. It's beautiful alpine country, and from this kind of humble place, we're very proud to work with some of the largest retailers across Europe and even into North America as well. So you see like the Miami Heat there from North America, or Snipes here in Europe, and all kinds of companies in between. We're also Microsoft's Retail Partner of the Year for 2 years in a row, which is one of my favorite awards ever. I think that's really cool. But yeah, let's get into the content then. First theme that is on deck here is demographics and behavior. And anyone in charge of marketing and anyone involved at a more tactical or operational level in marketing needs to be concerned with demographics and behavior, because ultimately these are consumers who we are trying to target, reach, and yeah, make into happy customers. So the first thing that I want to talk about, by the way, thumbs up are not always endorsements. It just means that it's trending up. So fast fashion, I'm saying, is out. And no, I'm not saying that, I don't know, sustainable fashion is in, or refurbed, pre-owned, customer-to-customer marketplaces, all of this green circular economy type stuff. And that might be a bit of a hot take. I want to start with a bit of a hot take. I think we're just going to see fashion get even faster, warp speed fashion. And I think we're going to see continued consumption in that area, continued investment and growth in that area, for better or worse. Let's just talk about what we've seen lately. Why I say for better or worse? Well, if you're not aware, textiles, of which fast fashion is only a part, but textiles are contributing to about 10% of carbon emissions globally, which is an awful lot. There is just a problem here with clothing that is perfectly wearable and usable still being discarded, all kinds of waste going on, things that are sent back and cannot be resold, dealing on the topic of returns. And then you've got these massive disruptive players like Shein accelerating this trend. So where in the past, someone like, let's say, Zara was probably considered fast fashion, Shein is an order of magnitude faster than that, with 10,000 new products every single day. And they make these in very small batches in the first place, and they really follow the data, and they algorithmically select which of these products are going to reorder and scale up based on how they do. And this segment, fast fashion, is expected to keep growing. In fact, as big as it is, it's expected to grow 11% year over year in the year ahead. So that's why it's hard for me to say like that I'm bullish on fast fashion, because I've got very mixed feelings about it. But it's a segment that's going to keep growing, and we're going to talk more about some of these disruptors out of China, like Shein, in a bit. But one thing that I promised is that for every one of these topics, going to have a quick sort of ELI 5. If you don't know what ELI 5 means, that's explain it like I'm 5. So just to kind of boil it down, fast fashion, what is going on here? And I'm sorry, because I'm sure there are people working in fashion. I don't want to, I know it's complicated, that for me to go out there and call it a dirty business. But there are problems in supply chain. There are problems in the consumption patterns that we see right now. So let's be real about that. And it's pitting consumer values against convenience. And you can jump ahead and read down the page in front of me, but I see this as not only limited to just fashion. There are challenges facing e-com in terms of sustainability and business models and what's happening with competition. And I just think that fast fashion is kind of one of the most headline grabbing and sort of spectacular examples of what's going on in e-commerce right now. And in terms of that battle where consumer values, where people on surveys say that they value sustainability, that they value eco-friendly things and so on, ultimately, we have to watch when people open their wallets and where the money goes. That's the only way we'll know. Another thing that's been in the headlines a lot lately, for probably at least the past 6 months or so, and even really coming in strong into the new year, is that luxury is out. Credit card statements are in, or maybe even past due. So let's talk about that a bit. I've got a meme here. That's Henry Cavill and someone sneaking up on him, specifically inflation. Now, why did I choose Henry? Because if you don't know it, Henry is also an acronym meaning high earner, not rich yet. And it's one of the key demographics in the luxury market. So those are these people that you might describe as aspirational luxury buyers, where they might be spending a bit beyond their means. They've got good paycheck coming in, and they want to reflect that to the world, even though they haven't had time to acquire that wealth. And those are people that are definitely dropping out of the market. There are other kinds of aspirational buyers out there too in luxury, but we generally see that that aspiration kind of grasping for things perhaps a bit beyond your reach, it's now getting a bit untenable. This is a viral tweet from almost right about a year ago. Not an endorsement of Zero Hedge. I think they're like, I think I heard them described as far right libertarian. Not going to comment on the politics, but this chart is really interesting. And it explains how we've been set up to this situation over the past few years. Basically, if you look at the red line, you see credit card debt, and this is US data, by the way, and it was just mounting and mounting and mounting, climbing over time. And then it dropped sharply, and the green line, which is a savings rate, which was below that line for a while, suddenly popped up. And what caused that kind of switch was the pandemic, where people stopped spending and consuming so much because they were locked at home, and they started saving. There were also stimulus checks in there, which probably represented by a couple of the spikes that you see. So people paid down their debt, people started saving, and then you see as lockdown ended that the trend actually, it worsened, it accelerated compared to how it was in the pre-pandemic. And this was partly caused by inflation, where debt just started mounting at a faster rate than ever, and savings were lower than ever before. So quite a concerning situation, and it's one reason, luxury defied gravity for a while there. Luxury somehow kept booming. Luxury was actually a great sector for a while, but everything that goes up must come down, and we're seeing that take effect. So that's what's happening right now. And why does this matter? Like, so what? As I wrote there, this is the tip of the iceberg, the diamond-studded tip. It's that luxury effect that makes us so headline grabbing and interesting to us. But actually, these kind of shifts have been going on and are going on in all kinds of segments. People are just pinched. Now, I think that inflation is expected to be much more moderate in 2024. It will probably be feeling it a bit less. And it looks like, for example, in the US, where we're looking, it looks like the Fed has somehow engineered what's called a soft landing without the need for a recession. Time will tell. But the fact is that it puts more pressure than ever on making sure that your pricing is in point, making sure that the value offer is clear. So that's why I recommend, checking out what's occurring in your average order values, checking out what's occurring in different price ranges, and closely monitoring your competition. Doesn't mean that you're going to, just undercut your competition at every price, but rather decide which battles are you going to pick. And that's something, by the way, if you need help, that's something that we can help you with. Next trend, this is actually something I just learned about a couple months ago, so I put it on here. But actually, it's a bit older. I found out when I researched it, but Google it is this kind of ubiquitous phrase in modern digital culture. Google just became the generic term for searching things, just like you might associate, at least in the US where I'm from, we call tissues Kleenex, or we call copying machines Xerox. It's just that dominant in the category. But what I found out is that youngsters, not me, youngsters are starting to say, search it up. That's what they've been saying. So you search something up, much like looking something up. It's kind of a formation of that. Oh, let's look it up. They say, let's search it up. And so what I think that reflects is basically that people are more open to different search experiences. And this is just some data. It's kind of meta here, because I actually went to see how often search it up is searched on Google. And you can see that the search interest is rising over time. It's over twice as high as a couple of years ago, or a few years ago. But why this matters? Well, I think there were some big headlines last year how TikTok was going to destroy Google search. And there was also big headlines about how Microsoft's generative search experience or integrating search and AI was going to blow up Google. Now, I've always been skeptical about those kind of things because Google is just so dominant. And yeah, I think a lot of people feel that Google search quality is degrading over time, but it's still the best option, more or less. Or I'm not a millennial, maybe I'm more a boomer, I don't know. But it is the time to get started and start diversifying because the technology is changing and it can get disrupted like that. So what I recommend is looking at your Bing search engine optimization. Why do I single out Bing? Well, because I just said like there were these headlines, right? That Bing was integrating AI, and what we learned is that it actually didn't make a difference in Bing's market share over the course of the past year, at least. But I'm using Bing on a daily basis, many times a day, indirectly. I'm using it when I browse online with ChatGPT, and I'm not alone in that. A lot of people are using Bing now. So making sure that you are visible to Bing, make sure that you are visible to ChatGPT, and that's important. I also recommend in the Google environment, what's kind of new there. Well, a lot of questions about SGE, how can we prepare for that, the generative search experience. And there's some very, very recent information suggesting that maybe Google is going to slightly delay what's going on with SGE. I think Microsoft kind of made them dance a little bit, and maybe they found out that they didn't need to just stand up and dance like that. But I think the way that you can be best prepared is through merchant excellence or merchant SEO, it's sometimes called, just doing all these things to make sure that you have good structured data in place for your e-commerce site to be as visible as possible, that you're taking care of that stuff as much as possible. And you'll see that, your merchant center data is now reflected or can be linked into your Google Search Console. So there are ways that people on your teams can help connect these dots. And it's my assumption that if you are well discoverable as possible for all kinds of free listings and surfaces across Google, that you'll also be easily discoverable by Google's AI. And then, yeah, there is TikTok, there is YouTube search. Of course, you need to focus on these things too. Moving on to our second theme, that's analytics and measurement. So, by measurement, I also mean what kind of goals are people setting? And I think this is even more, I don't know, 2022, perhaps 2021, but that mindset of LTV, baby, this idea that, I think there were a lot of brands who were really sticking their necks out there, really long necks on these very long payback cycles. The idea was that, if they would kind of optimize based on the lifetime value instead of just a single order, that they could advertise much more aggressively and with a long-term view, which these are kind of good arguments. I think the problem is that a lot of cases, these turned out to be leaky buckets. The retention fundamentals weren't really in place, or the LTV models were bad. LTV is incredibly hard to do for e-commerce. And now we've seen the pendulum swing back the other way with first order profit. No, wait, free cash flow. No, wait, contribution margin too. No, wait, what is contribution margin? There's all kinds of really interesting debates going on in the community, and I think now we see people even getting back toward lifetime value once again. So what happened here? I mean, these long-term payback bets blew up. That's what happened. A lot of companies got caught with their pants down, more or less, in the post-COVID e-commerce bust. We also saw public valuations or companies that got listed publicly, and it was kind of the emperor has no clothes. And so there's a lot more conservatism or caution in the way people measure efficiency. And I think that's perfectly right, because there's a lot of market concentration going on right now. There are big spenders out there. and you might really be running into a brick wall to try to go up against them, thinking, oh, I'll just be more aggressive. It might not work out. So as I've said, like, I just think that the relationship between CMO and CFO is more important than ever. And I also think that there's kind of a middle way here, which is to think about, instead of like a very long-term lifetime value, looking at, a 30-day model, a 60-day model, a 90-day model, but how far can we stick our necks out? Do we have to stick our neck out the whole way? Because you might be kind of over optimizing if you really are focused just on the first order profit. I agree with that. And by the way, if you're looking at ways that you can link your campaigns more closely to profitability, that's also something we can help you with. In-platform ROAS, blended metrics like marketing efficiency ratio, as well as other tactics like marketing mix modeling. People are definitely looking at new ways of measuring, period. And yeah, I call it the ROAS pathology. I wrote an article a couple of years ago criticizing ROAS. And so, but I also, I'm not such a big fan of some of these other metrics too, like these blended metrics. I get the idea. I think that they are directionally very informative or important, but they're not an optimization basis. If we just to get into definitions here, like basically looking at how is your efficiency when you combine your channels together, take a higher level aggregated view, like marketing efficiency ratio, looking at all of your revenue held against all of your advertising costs. And my concern is that sometimes people, it's almost a bit like reading tea leaves, because people say, oh, like we made this investment in Facebook, and our marketing efficiency ratio did this. It must have been Facebook, but it's an assumption. It's very, very assumption based. Now I get the problems with in-platform return on ad spend measurement too. I think that it's just an area where we need to be more careful than ever. Whoops, I think I have a slide error there. But basically, it's an area where I just urge a lot of caution and making sure that similar to the last point, that you're well aligned with your CFO, and that there's a kind of an agreement there, handshake level agreement. So let's talk about some channels and tactics. I think I meant to have another point about consent management, but I must have shuffled it to another theme. Sorry about that. So out, this will be also a little controversial. I mean, Wish, I think we can all agree Wish is out, and I'll show you something about that in just a second. AliExpress, here in Europe, they totally had an opportunity, and they totally lost that opportunity to Temu and Shein. We were just talking about this hyperspeed, warp speed fashion earlier, where Shein is emblematic of that, and they're also kind of getting into a broader marketplace model and broader categories, it looks like too. But again, a thumbs up here is not necessarily an endorsement. I'm very critical of Temu, but they are spending at an almost unprecedented level. Let me just show you some data about that. So this is based on Google Shopping Auctions. Just to be really clear about that. Not Google Ads totally, it's not all advertising. This is Google Shopping Auctions. But the gray line there is Wish, and the purple line is Temu, and the black line is Amazon. So we can see that Amazon has been dominant and consistent for years. They did have a dip in the peak period, like kind of the acute period of the pandemic, where their auction penetration got a lot less. They left a lot of auctions for a period of weeks, and it damaged, this is a quarterly view of that data, so it damaged the whole quarter in that way. And we see that Wish was around Q3, Q4 2020, reaching kind of their peak. And they were on par with Amazon, which is very impressive. But Amazon is also spending more now since then. Amazon has become even more dominant. We're seeing them hovering pretty steady around 80% auction penetration for years now at this point. And then there's that line at the end, which is completely insane. It's this like meteoric rise here in Europe. Temu, they started earlier in the US, of course. But Temu has just become massively prevalent in the auctions. Do yourself a favor and search like buy Lego or something like that on your phone. I had searched this the other day, and I was pretty shocked. Like I had to swipe through 12 product listing ads on Google search until I got to the first ad that was not Temu. It was pretty shocking. And in that context, Temu's not just steamrolling the brand Lego. They're also steamrolling every other retailer that might be advertising for Lego. And maybe it's an unfair example because buy Lego is a very kind of generic term in a way, or like a very kind of, yeah, broad term, you might say. But still, I think it offers you a good picture of what's going on. So yeah, just to ELI 5, explain it like I'm 5. I mean, Temu is spending a just about unheard of amount of money on ads. We just talked about Google right there, but I think Google is actually one of their smaller channels, like compared to paid social. It's astonishing what they're spending there. Why does this matter? Well, we just talked like if you have to swipe through 12 results till you find the first non-Temu ad, which is maybe an edge case, but it's happening. Of course, that's stealing visibility. It's probably also driving up CPMs and CPCs across these different channels. There were claims from Etsy, for example, that they feel Temu is single-handedly driving up their advertising costs. And yes, people don't like to admit this because they say, Temu customers are not my customers, or my customers are not Temu customers. But they are going to steal some sales too, of course. So you can get smart about your Temu strategy. Talk to me about that if you're interested. I can show you, for example, in Google Ads, how you can use auction insights to understand where Temu is really competing against you and where there might be windows of opportunity. And I also invite you to ask Google to change the situation because Google is absolutely profiting from this. Meta as well. They've said it. I don't think Google has quite acknowledged this in one of their earnings calls yet. Not that I've heard. Meta did. They addressed that there's a massive lift coming out of APAC, and I think some names were named there. But I think that this is not good for consumers because just imagine you're looking for Lego. I'm sorry to harp on this example, but like, we still have Legos. We just picked up Legos from grandma and grandpa's that are 30 years old and they still work. They're not broken. The colors haven't faded. They fit perfectly with the Legos we bought last week. It's an astonishingly good quality product. And I would question if what Temu's selling matches that. Arguably any other advertiser would have been more relevant and the customer would have been better served by seeing that ad. And Google is, they can't tell somebody they're not allowed to advertise on the platform, but I think they could take better measures to control what's happening. Yes, so this is what I call a concept that I call all roads lead to PMAX. Since we're on the topic of channels, and we're going to look at how this is broader than just Google and just Performance Max. But basically, what we see is that kind of these kind of single concept campaigns are on their way out, and these all-in-one campaigns are very much on their way in. And as an example, in the case of Performance Max Smart Shopping, which was already kind of a step in this direction above standard shopping, has been absorbed into PMax. Local campaigns absorbed. Google Display and Dynamic Search are on their way. And we've seen surveys from Google's product team asking about keyword search too, classic text ads, classic search campaigns, how people would feel about those getting migrated into Performance Max. So there's really a way in which Performance Max is kind of a new advertising platform incubating inside of the old advertising platform. And I hope I'm not getting too weird with my metaphors here, but it's like if you've ever heard about like these joined twins and one sort of absorbs the other, like it's there's something really fascinating happening here with the advertising channel as we know it, and there are implications to that. And another thing is that it's not just Google that's doing this. Google is kind of leading the way here, but other platforms are following too. So we see like, yeah, Smart Shopping became Performance Max, and TikTok. So wait, Performance Max. Wait, hold on. Let me start again. Smart Shopping, Performance Max, Smart Performance, Advantage Plus Shopping, Performance Plus. These things, it's like when people joke about D2C brands all having the same font or something like that. I mean, the naming here is not creative, but that's a different topic. But more importantly is what's in the parentheses there. Google, TikTok, Meta, Amazon, every platform is going in this direction. So people critical of Google, I mean, this is the future of advertising. So to get into the ELI 5, just again, what's happening here? Well, these highly automated all-in-one campaigns are becoming more dominant. And these campaigns are famous as black boxes. That's why you see here at the center of this all roads lead to PMax thing is a black box, which is frustrating to advertisers. And it may not align with your organization to have like, these branding elements mixed in with these lower funnel elements. It can feel very much like a soup, and your organization is not allowed to be a soup, right? Your budgets might be different, separate. Your goals might be different and separate. And so that can be agitating, right? But what I recommend here is this is the future, and we shouldn't fight it too hard. And what you can do to differentiate is to get smart about integrating first-party data. It's almost the only thing that's left in things campaign types. And I don't just mean first-party audiences. I also mean product data, things about your business that the platforms don't know. And I'm going to dig in a little deeper here because it's a theme that's kind of dear to me. So another thing that I see is on its way out is what I call simple product scoring. And I don't want to knock anyone here because I think that this approach, like when you hear of approaches like heroes and zombies, for example, or bleeders and leaders, or ghost products, or things like that. It's a topic that's been around for years, which is that there are products that Google, for example, or doesn't seem to advertise. And it's like, how can I kind of wake up these products? And, you'll have kind of cost eaters, and you'll have unsung heroes that probably need more budget than they're getting. And so their approach is to score products basically on the intersection of volume and efficiency, and try to get them into the right bucket. Now, what I propose here is n-dimensional product scoring. And I don't know, maybe I just feel smart saying the phrase n-dimensional, but let me explain what it is. Because the other thing that we're talking about, if you have volume and if on one axis and efficiency on the other axis, it's just two-dimensional. N-dimensional means that you can have an unlimited amount of dimensions. You can take a much more nuanced and complete view on how to score your products. So just imagine, for example, the intersection of margin, the intersection of stock level, the intersection of competitive pricing, along with things like volume and efficiency, the intersection of product lifecycle. You can already, like we were talking about, a two-dimensional thing earlier, which you can easily picture. You can even easily picture a third dimension. Let's imagine volume, efficiency, and margin. You can picture this kind of three-dimensional space, but as soon as you add on a fourth or a fifth dimension, it's not something that our minds can really comprehend. And so this is an area where technology is quite helpful. There are many approaches, though, if you can that you can do to try to pursue this. But again, it's something that we can help you with if you're interested. So, again, what's going on here? Well, platforms don't know the true value of your products. If you have a single campaign or a small number of campaigns, the platform, what are you providing there? A budget, an efficiency target? the platform doesn't know more than that. It doesn't know if it's important to you, why it's important to you. These products are very much equally weighted. And the platforms also think on a per auction basis. They're not thinking strategically long-term or even mid-term. I mean, maybe they're thinking toward the end of the month, how can budget be spent? But they're not thinking longer than that. And the idea is that by integrating more data, you can basically be more competitive. You can have better business results. You can have more effective product marketing. So I've got a fun video coming up. I'm excited for that. All right, social commerce has been hyped a lot the last couple of years, and I say that APAC-style social commerce is out. I've been saying this since day one. I don't think it's plausible or believable that this kind of live streaming QVC style advertising is going to have the same impact and market size in Europe or North America or Western markets as it does in APAC. I think that there are meaningful cultural differences. I think that there are all kinds of reasons. And you would see these reports with very big estimates about what would happen here because people assumed it would be just like it is in China, for example. But there's no reason to assume that. Now, what I think is much more interesting are these partnerships we see in social commerce, like Amazon and Pinterest, for example, or things that are occurring like Facebook Shops was kind of laughable in the past, but it's getting serious now. TikTok Shops, still very new, maybe not really ready for prime time, but looking better bit by bit. So I think those are kind of the real areas. And I'm going to give you an example of what's out or what, an alternative reality that could never be here, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if you ever saw this before. This to me is stunning. This is real. This is a very popular social commerce live stream influencer in China. And this to me just exemplifies how social commerce has kind of jumped the shark, as you might say, or in other words, it's gone to its logical extreme. There's another video I looked for. I couldn't find it right now, but there's like, it's under a bridge in this city in China. It's under a bridge and it's crowded with people sitting on the ground with their smartphones and these ring lights shining on their face and stuff like that. And they're holding up products, live streaming, trying to be shopping influencers from underneath the bridge. And why are all these people crowded underneath the bridge? Because the platform that they use has geotagging, and the bridge that they are underneath is in a very wealthy and kind of hip neighborhood. And the algorithm boosts their posts for being sent from a wealthy, hip neighborhood. But these are extreme examples like the speedrunner lady and the people under the bridge. But that is how big social e-commerce is in China and in APAC. And that's how big it will never be in the West. So it's been massively overhyped or massively overvalued, but there are real opportunities. That's the what here. And the so what, oops, I have another typo there. The so what is that this can make a lot of sense if you've got the right assets and capabilities in place. And again, to watch out for these very real and interesting partnerships that are shaping up. Number 4, AI and Martech. And we're getting pretty ripe into the time box here, so I'll try to keep this quick. But I think Martech is down and AI is up. And this is, you've seen all the jokes and stuff that all you need to do is say the word AI 1,000 times and you'll have a very popular press conference or whatever the case might be. And I tried not to say the word AI too much till now, but it's time. So everyone knows, I think, the Martech landscape where it shows like this insanely dense cluster of logos, and there's more and more every year, thousands and thousands. That comes from this guy named Scott Brinker. He's famous for that. And I actually like this view on the data a lot more. You know, there's kind of a joke too that like no presentation, no marketing presentation is complete without showing that image. But here's something I bet you didn't see before. And this is that same information presented just as a time series. And I want to call your attention to the green dot. And you can see, I hope it's legible to you, but I'll read it out loud. You can see what Scott wrote there. So he didn't even make it all the way through the year of 2023. He just looked at the first 6 months, and this is what has been stimulated by large language models and this kind of new generation of AI with ChatGPT and all this kind of technology. So, you know, there were over 2,000 new Martech apps within 6 months in the past year. And that's 18.5% growth in 6 months. And there were already 11,000 Martech apps in the environment. So it's not like they were growing on a small base. You know, the thing that's almost 20% growth in 6 months. It's absolutely astonishing what's going on due to the introduction of this new catalyzing, stimulating technology, AI. Now, I've been working with machine learning and AI products for years, and I can tell you like my concern here, because in the past, if someone was saying AI, it was probably not, to be honest, for most majority of vendors. Now, I mean, it probably is. They're probably connecting to, you know, like the ChatGPT or to OpenAI's API. But the question is like, what are they doing that you couldn't do? Or what's the value that they're adding on top? Or what problem are they solving? So what happened? Yeah, this is stimulating massive growth. So what? There's a lot of potential there, but that's a ton of stuff for leaders to try to figure out what tool they're supposed to use. And procurement teams, it's, you know, imagine the RFPs. But what now? I mean, my recommendation is to start, be selfish, put yourself first. Don't look at all that massive environment. Just look at your own business. What are the needs you have? And work backwards from there. And be careful, because there's going to be snake oil salespeople out there. And we didn't even talk about the GPT store. That's a whole other thing. Getting toward the end here, one thing. Yeah, that's out. Google Ads UI. Because why do I say that? There's less and less stuff that you can do in the Google Ads UI compared to the past, or in Meta or wherever. Like, you know, you see people really digging into these niche topics like testing, creative testing, and or you know, product segmentation, these kind of things, because there are fewer other things that they can do. But I want to call your attention to the fact that these platforms are open sourcing some stuff. I mean, Meta is famous for Robin, their open source marketing mix modeling tool. But this is a glimpse of what's going on from Google. And I think it's way cooler than anything that's happening in the ads platform right now. I mean, just to run you through these quick, there is a geo experiment library. There's you can run ads based on real world events. There's their own version of marketing mix modeling. There is something for multilingual search term clustering. There is generative AI optimizing your product feed. There's lifetime value predictions, what we talked about earlier. There's profit bidding. We talked about profitability earlier. There is asset management in there. And there's even also A/B tests for your feeds. There's just this wealth of tools and capabilities there that I think a lot of people are not aware of. And what I like about these, I mean, I'm going to hype one of these in particular, which is Google Match Markets. We've been using that one for over a year, just as an example. And it's great because, yeah, you can do tests in Google's environment as well. But here you get like the research and methodology of Google, of their geo testing, but you're in full control. You can customize the test to exactly your needs. You can review every line of code if you want. So it's completely transparent. You don't have to be worried that Google is like fiddling with things behind the scene or something like that. Of course, they would never. But so this is, also something that we can help you with. And when we deploy our technology, this is something that we often use because we don't have to guess if our technology is helping or not. We know it's helping because we use tests like this to prove it. So explain it like I'm five. There are some very cool new capabilities, and you don't need to have a lot of tech resources to deploy these things compared to what you do if you built it on your own. And they can also be a really important way, like we mentioned before, these all-in-one platforms. It's hard to stand out. It's hard to do something different. These are ways that you can do different because like those things about your feed is another thing that matters a lot right now. And what now? I think is very simple. Try them out or talk to someone like us who can help you. Okay, yeah, here's what the slide that was misplaced earlier. I'm sorry, I think I had an outdated copy of the deck. Really sorry about that. But what I call devil may care remarketing, where people are playing it fast and loose with audiences compared to consent-based remarketing. And this is very, mandatory. What can I say? Here in European Economic Area, at least, there's a thing called the Digital Markets Act. And this means that platforms like Google and Meta, Apple, other large, mostly American big tech companies, they've been designated as a thing called gatekeepers, and they are held to a higher standard now than some other businesses. And the impact on you as a marketer is that, for example, you need to be really sharp on consent for remarketing. If you don't have this thing called consent mode version 2 implemented by March 6th, your remarketing lists will gradually stop working, possibly just break, we're not sure. And we've been told by Google that you can expect by the end of the year, conversion measurement will also not work. So this is really important to implement. Actually, we have a brand new episode of the Growing E-commerce podcast out yesterday, where I talk through this exact theme in a lot of detail with an expert. So if you want to know how it works, go and listen to that. And also a warning, I've seen people saying like, oh, the deadline has changed. The deadline has not changed, and it's not going to change. Or things like, hey, we have workarounds for personalization. That's definitely going to be fingerprinting. Don't do it, or be very careful. So just be mindful of this stuff out there. Boy, that was 45 minutes. It went by fast, and I want to allow about 15 minutes for Q&A. So we're in the time box somehow. Before we get in Q&A, I just want to say thanks very much again for your time. And by the way, you can take out your phones, scan that QR code. It's a great way to be in touch with me. I don't know if it's like, you don't have to, like, you can send me a connection request, whatever. I don't bite. I'm not scary. Just get in touch. And having said that, if you have questions, please send them my way. All right, so there were a few comments about whether the audio was working, but here we go. What are the ways that we retailers who don't have such big pockets can fight Temu? Temu has become a small passion project of mine. I don't know. A colleague shared like a screenshot back in June or something last year. I don't know what, showing how dominant they were in the SERP and in the search engine result page. And it was concerning to me. And I interviewed with Modern Retail and the Financial Times about Temu. So like, I definitely have opinions here, but let me get tactical about it. As I mentioned before, auction insights can be your best friend. I think this report is still underutilized. You can look at auction insights at a campaign level, or depending on the campaign type, you can look at it at, like the ad group level or the keyword level. Now that's all in Google Ads, right? And you can also look at it at the retail category level. And there are 5 levels of retail categories. So this can help you triangulate, like, I would look at where's my overlap rate with Temu high, because that means they're in a lot of my auctions with me. And where's my outranking share low, because that means that they are outranking me. So that's like a bad quadrant to be in, you know, if you can imagine that. If they're overlapping in a lot of your auctions and they're outranking you, that's bad. There's going to be other areas of opportunity in there where you'll see that you are that the tables are turned. So you might look at, okay, that's an area where I can know Temu is not messing with me and I can invest more confidently. Again, pricing also very important. Temu is very cheap, and just having a look at your pricing, being mindful of what's going on there is also going to be important if you see you're getting blasted out of the water. But yeah, I mean, Temu is using a brute force strategy. You can be smarter on targeting. You can be smarter on audiences. You can be smarter on your copy and creative, on having a clear value proposition. The worst thing that Temu can do is just hogging those results and stealing the impressions entirely. That drives me nuts because you don't even have a chance. But when you can get impressions against Temu, then you have a chance. Can you explain how to integrate first-party data into product as it relates to Performance Max? Is that like customer lists for people who have bought a certain product or category? Well, okay, you can look at the intersection of products and audience. Like you can look at which products are associated with like order opener effects or associated with a good lifetime value. And these are products that you can be more aggressive on. But I also mean, you know, everything from what is your stock level, and not just like, am I in stock or out of stock? That's the type of thing you think of as being classically really important with Amazon, for example, because if you go out of stock, you're going to get dinged. But more like, what is my availability and my core sizing, for example, or core colors, or whatever the case might be, depending on your category. Getting into more detailed optimization in that area, but also getting into things like just finding like, where does it make sense to advertise this product, because I'm going to have a good conversion rate, because it's more incremental to my business, not in the sense of marketing incrementality, but you know, like your best sellers, they just need budget. There's demand for them. They're going to sell well. But you're going to have other products that need that advertising pressure, or where Google doesn't know the fact that you had like better COGS than usual or something like that. These are all things that you can bring into the platform. So how can you control an n-dimensional product scoring or segmentation? By uploading first-party data. So let's get into that a little bit. And I don't want to like, you know, pitch you here or something. But if you want to learn more, reach out to me. But what we do is we use machine learning to handle product scoring. Because as I mentioned, it's this very complex dimensional space. We can look at lots of signals, and more than a human can do by themselves, and look at the correlation with like order value, conversion rate, or value per click. And then we can also, you know, you can put in what's important to you as well. But generally, you can also, you know, it is possible to score products using rule of thumb, using formulas. These things are possible too. And then you can introduce that information to Google through your feed. So, you know, I'm not gonna lie to you and say you can only do that by working with a technology provider like us, but you might find there are advantages to working with someone like us. Tell the story of ChatGPT store or shop or something like that. So I was talking about the GPT store. Oh boy, I think it was in November, maybe last year, October, November at if I remember, at OpenAI's Developer Days or something. I can't remember, but they introduced a new thing which is called, like, you can make your own GPT. So basically, you can do this in theory in a matter of minutes or hours, days. It depends how much time you want to invest in it. But for example, you can provide a lot of training and instruction to a GPT model. My son calls it spaghetti GPT, or chat spaghetti, he calls it. Sorry. But you can introduce lots of things. You can upload PDFs and stuff. Like you could I don't know, get a PDF of Cole Nussbaumer's storytelling with data and teach it to ChatGPT. I don't know. That's probably infringing. That's never mind. Don't do that. It's probably infringing copyright, but you can feed it whatever you want and make a customized model that's designed to do very specific things, and have certain behaviors and workflows in there. So then more recently, they introduced a GPT store where people can, like before you could share your GPT with anyone. If it was public, you could share it, but now you can also sell your GPT. People already are producing, I know there's like ones for SEO, for example, and probably more. They're producing their own custom GPTs and selling them. And yeah, I don't know. I don't have a lot of advice on that yet. I think it's very new technology, and you just need to be mindful when you're buying those. I think it's buyer beware at the moment, to be honest. How will inflation affect behavioral patterns for purchasing digital products? Yeah, I mean, this is something that's going to vary per market here in Europe, and generally, but I specifically mentioned Europe because it's not a single market, and we see that there are different inflation rates and so on. So I recommend, there's really great public databases about inflation. There are public databases about consumer confidence. These can be interesting to look at together. I often do that because it helps give you a feeling for what's going on. But they're lagging indicators, like these reports are always published with like a month delay or something like that. So that's the one thing to be mindful of. But I think here in Austria, for example, where I am, I think we had like 8% inflation last year, and we're expecting like 4% this year, something like that. And let's say that a normal inflation would be in the range of 2 to 3%. So it's cooling down, which is good. But the fact is that it has stacked up over the past couple of years. I think here in Austria, compared to 2 years ago, things are like 20% more expensive. And, that 4% is then going to come on top of that. And it isn't necessarily the case that salaries have caught up to that. So it's certainly something to be mindful of this year as well. I think people won't be talking about it quite as much as they did, but it's a long squeeze. Like I still look at my grocery bill and I remember what it cost. It feels like yesterday, and I see what it costs now. So I really think it's that blend though of market, vertical or category, and who your demographic is. It's hard to predict exactly, but I would expect it's still not going to be the fastest growing year ever. People are still probably going to be cautious on spending. Do we have success stories or use cases for industrial software B2B e-commerce? No, that's not really a category that we're in. We do work with some for industrial software. Yeah, no, we work with some B2B e-commerce and like electronics and some different categories like this, but sorry, I don't have one. Considering AI and black box campaigns taking over, what is the skill a CMO should excel in versus what are the skills an advertising expert should focus on? Good question. I think it feels broader and broader what CMOs are expected to focus on, and they have a notoriously short lifespan in typical companies. And I feel that this is often because companies don't always have a rational mindset toward marketing or what they can really expect out of marketing. Marketing is often viewed as a cost center instead of a value center. And I've tried to mention the importance of that handshake between the CMO and the CFO a few times. So I think if there's anything that a CMO should excel in, it's thinking more like a CFO. And it's also thinking about presenting their channels and what's going on in their activity as value oriented and not cost oriented. And for an advertising expert, some of that carries over too. Like there's for years been this obsession with cost per click and cost per 1,000 impressions, CPM. And when you're talking about CPC or CPM, you are pegging your channel as a cost center. You're not representing it in the best way possible. So this is why I'm a big advocate talking about value per click. You know, and this is again when I talk about things like connecting your channels to other business results. Like then you can also, like, you know, when other teams are bought in, that the campaigns are not just like driving a good efficiency, and it doesn't matter what's happening on the logistics side, and you know, totally screwing over other departments or something like that, because some products are selling way too fast that they don't have enough shelf, like they don't have enough shelf supply to do that, and they would have sold out fine on their own. You know what I'm saying? Like this is why I feel like it's really important to talk to other departments. And generally, considering AI, I feel that a trend that's going to occur in the future is what I call role merging. And I'm not an expert in this. These are just my take. But I think that as there becomes potentially less work for some roles, that there'll be the opportunity for one individual to cover what were separately two full-time roles. And I think that something that's going to be really valuable in a scenario like that is analytical skill. I think analytics and analytical skill, and I don't just mean like, I don't mean Google Analytics with that, I mean more broadly. Having an analytical skill set is really important. How would you recommend people dealing with junk inventory we get served through campaigns like PMax? Is it just a side effect as long as you're hitting your targets? Yeah, I mean, so a campaign type like Performance Max, in case someone in here is less familiar, you don't have a lot of transparency into the placements where your ads are getting placed, and you don't have a lot of control over those placements either. And you know, the fact is that according to the in-platform numbers, PMax tends to be pretty ROI positive, or pretty, I shouldn't say ROI, it's pretty ROAS, it tends to hit the ROAS targets, let's say it like that, okay? And it's a valid concern to say that like it might kind of over deliver in one area and then pad out with you know, to spend the extra budget, pad out to sell unused inventory and stuff like that. These are valid concerns, and we just don't know a lot. So basically, you know, there are placement exclusions possible to one extent or another. Like there's app exclusions that are possible. There are channel exclusions that are possible on like YouTube, and there are options still out there. And you can also, there are these kind of hacked campaigns like running a feed only campaign, which basically means that you're denying the campaign the assets it needs to serve in other kinds of placements. That's mostly what you can do about it. There's not a lot more, to be honest. Will this be replayable? I'll answer that in case, because someone joined late here. Yes, it's going to be replayable. It will be uploaded to YouTube, and we will share that video with you. We're at the hour, and that was the last question. So thanks very much, everyone, for joining. And again, sorry, actually, I meant to stop sharing my screen so you can see my picture bigger. But again, scan that code if you like and reach out to me. I don't bite. Thanks again.